process for getting a Mac configured for using Git with VS Code. So first thing we want to do is typically, if you've never used Git on your computer, we're going to install the Git software on the operating system. So if you have a Mac, you're going to want to come to git-scm.com, and on the home page here you can see they've got a link here for a download. So you're going to download the latest version, 2.270 in this instance. If you are familiar with Brew or Homebrew, you could run it from the command line. Typically what we would do though is just use a binary installer. And what the binary will do, it's a pre-packaged software installation file that we'll download and then will run as an installation just like any other software you would download from the web. So this is going to take us to SourceForge, and just double check this is the official installer for Git for macOS. So we're going to hit the green download button here and take a look at what it will do once it downloads. It takes a few seconds for it, and it's going to ask you where on your computer you want to save that. So I typically will put this on the desktop just because I will not be keeping this after the install. So I'll hit save. You can see down here it's a 28 meg file. So we will double click on that thing when it's done. Okay, so we'll double click on this. It's going to open up the disk image. And we will just double click on this install package. And you'll typically get this warning with the newer operating systems where the OS is trying to protect you from unidentified software being installed. So what we need to do is come over to System Prefs, and we're going to move this window over here so we can still see that. So we want to enter into Security and Privacy and go to the General tab, which once we click OK on the installer window over here, for SourceForge, it's going to say that this package was blocked for use as it's not from an identified developer. So we're going to open anyway because we know that it came from a reputable site, and we're going to just confirm that we really want to open that. And then back here in the background here we have the installer for Git. So we're going to hit continue. We're going to leave the default installation location, hit install, type in our password for the OS. This takes a second or two to install it. Hit close. And now we have Git installed. To double check that, you can open the terminal and we can type in just the command git, and you'll see a whole list of usage information here, common commands. This is just going to show you that it's actually installed and working. If it failed, or if you wanted to test that before downloading Git, typically you would get an error when you try to run the software. So we can close the terminal, we can close the Git download page, and what we'll do next is open up VS Code, and we're going to want to make sure don't have a workspace open or have any folders open within VS Code. So if I did, I'd close any of those items. And what I want to do, if I'm starting a brand new project, I'm going to save the empty workspace as, I'm going to give it a name, so I'm going to call this Git Demo. Okay, and I'm going to put this into folder in Documents, and I'm just saving the workspace file. So now that I have a workspace saved, I want to make sure that I have the Git extensions that we will be using for the project here. So first thing I want to do is just type in Git, and I'm searching in the extensions marketplace within VS Code. So typically we'll want to install the Git extension pack, and that will install things like Git history, Git lens, and a few other components. So if we take a look at that, project manager, Git ignore, all those get installed. So if you don't have that installed yet, definitely hit the green install and get that configured for your computer. And once you have that complete, what we want to do, and what we should see, now when you go to your File Explorer, you should see this second clone repository button here. If you're not seeing that, one other thing to check is to verify that VS Code is up to date. So we've seen a few instances where if your VS Code is not updated, this clone repository won't work because VS Code needs updating to work with the latest version of the Git extensions. So if you don't see this pop up right away, you may want to quit VS Code and then relaunch it and see if that fixes it. So once you have this clone repository option available, you'll want to go to your account on Git if you're working on your own project, or in this case, I'm going to provide you with a URL to the Git project. So this is the Git repository that's on GitHub that I've created. So we're just going to click the little clipboard icon, come back over here, hit clone. I'm going to paste in that URL, and I'm going to click the first option here, clone from URL. So now this is going to ask me where I want to save the files. I'm going to put this into Documents as well. I don't necessarily need to make a folder for this. So if I hit select repository location, it's going to create an HMM_prod folder, or whatever the Git repository was called. So now down here you have a few options here. It's asking if you want to open the repository or add it to your current workspace. We do want to add to workspace. And then over here in our File Explorer, we can see the HMM_prod GitHub folder, CSS, images, and a whole bunch of different HTML. This should match 100% what you can see over here on GitHub's website. So at this point, if you were looking to make updates to this site or these pages, you could just come in here and edit. I'm going to put in here Git repository address is that. So I'm going to make an edit to the README, and I'm going to save that file. And now on the left hand side here we should see some icons like this. This is our source control. What we should be seeing though is a track of that edit on that particular file. So I'm going to double check. This shows up as now uncommitted change. Okay. testing. I'm going to see if I can just commit. So it says no changes to commit. Maybe I'll make one more change to this. So I made my change, saved. So down here at the bottom in the status bar, we can see the branch of the Git repository that we're connected to, which in most cases the default is going to be main unless you've made your own branch. This little refresh icon is what we would select typically to update Git, so it would either push and pull. It should show you a count of the files that need to be pulled or pushed, and you can see once I refresh that over here, this is what I was expecting to see a few seconds ago, is in the source control it should be tracking now the change on the readme file. So the M at the end here signifies that the file has been modified, and so in order to commit this I need to add it to the group of staged files. So you can see now this change is staged and it shows as modify. So if I want to ever unstage that, I can just click the minus to unstage all files or just this individual file. Now up here at the top, I need to enter a commit message in order to commit this to the repository. So I'm going to say edited readme for Git video demo, and then I would check commit, or I can do command enter. You'll see the number of staged and changed files disappears, turns to 0. And then down here we have our refresh, and then this is going to show us there's no changes to come down, but we have one change to push up or commit. So back up here in source control, in the overflow ellipse menu, we have our option here to push. And so we're going to push our change to not only GitHub, but to the website that we're working on here. So the first time you do this, you may need to authenticate in the keychain your password for your Git credentials. So this is going to ask for your computer password, not your Git password, and I would check always allow. And you'll see a little progress up here, a little blue spinner, and if all goes well, next time you do your push-pull check here, we shouldn't see any new changes up at the top under source control. We can click now on the errors and warnings and go to output and take a look at Git, and we can see this is what all the commands that our push-pull did for us in the background. So that one changed file got put up over here, and we'll take a look at it, and we can see here's my changes that I added to it. So Git repository address, testing, etc. So now if I go to the website, and if I were to go to the README, I should see that same change there. So the way that is working is I had set up an action within GitHub to deploy our file changes on push. So every time somebody pushes, in the background here, all of your changes are being FTP'd from GitHub over to the host. So now, working on a project with multiple contributors is pretty simple. As everybody is adding files, making edits, changes, adding images, you can see we've got different image formats here that have been added. Let's see, what is this saying? Oh, it's complaining it doesn't like an Adobe Illustrator file, so we're going to ignore that. Because it can't preview. Images can go up, documents, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. The other thing to make sure is we never want to delete this GitHub folder because that contains details that GitHub is going to use for that FTP deployment. So this YML or Yahoo Markup Language file is what is allowing us to connect to the FTP server that we're using for this, and the password is actually contained within the settings on GitHub under Actions. So it's a great way to maintain security for this and control who has the actual password and who doesn't. So usually the owner of the project will maintain that. So that pretty much wraps it up. If you get stuck with this, again, if you're not seeing that button to clone from repository, you definitely want to do a little bit more research into the extensions you have and make sure that you have the proper software. The other issue that you may need to check is that you have authenticated through Git. So under the errors and warnings under output, there is a GitHub authentication, and we can see here there's some info here saying that it was getting the user info and got the account info. So if you're not seeing that, we may need to update your configuration within VS Code so that you can re-authenticate to GitHub. And I believe there is a GitHub extension that might be worth installing here. Integrates GitHub in its workflows. Let's take a look at that. So there might be a little bit more configuration to do with that. Looks like we have to set some access tokens on our end. So there might be a different extension to consider using. But again, based on what we've seen in class, it seems like there's only been one or two people that have had an issue where updating VS Code and trying a few other instances didn't correct this. So if you're still having those issues, we'll take a look. I think that wraps it up.